Is this my true profit, or I've made a mistake? Let me go back and revise my systematic way. And it says that the throughput of a company is limited by its constraint. So please find out the contributions per unit constraint time. Based on this, rate your products in a sequence of 1 to 10, or rather sequence your products based on the maximum throughput per unit of constraint time that you get. Have I done this process? I just picked up my most profitable product, put it on to the constraint available minutes, and calculated my profit. This is inertia. Many companies which have understood by calculations which are their most profitable products very rarely go back and check when the previous constraint has been broken. Or you have to go back and check for the profitability of the products once a new constraint appears. And in our case, a new constraint has appeared after we debottlenecked. Now let's go back and find out the contributions, the throughput per unit time of the new constraint. And the new constraint is machine A, which is now overloaded by 60%. Take product P, which is giving me a contribution of 45 divided by 15, 3. Take product Q, which gives me a throughput of 60 and it uses only 10 minutes of resource A. What is the ratio? 6. Product P dash, which is giving me a throughput of 27. It uses 15 minutes of my resource. What is the throughput ratio? 1.8. Let's go to Q dash, which is giving me a throughput of 40 and it uses only 10 minutes of my resource A. The ratio is 4. Suddenly, the previous sequence has changed. Now the new sequence is Q, the most profitable product, Q dash, the second most profitable product, third profitable product P, fourth P dash. Very often companies, after declaring their star products, are caught in an inertia and do not land up recalculating the new sequence of priority in which the product might be sold. This is what we saw earlier in the example. If the new sequence was not done, the final profit was coming to 1,602 rupees, taking into consideration the demand of the new market and all that demand that we could satisfy. Now the new sequence is Q, Q dash, P, P dash. Let's see how it translates when I go to the new market and do my calculations. So I'll be able to sell 50 units of Q in my old market, which is sold at 60 rupees of throughput, giving me a figure of 3,000 rupees of throughput. The next product is Q dash, which is Q in the new market. I will be able to sell 50 units of this Q dash at a new throughput amount of 40. 50 into 40, 2,000. By making 50-50 Q, I have only consumed 1,000 minutes of resource A. What I have left with me is 1,400 minutes of resource A. Now I will go and make product P. P consumes 15 minutes of resource A. This gives me a figure of approximately 93 units of P that can be sold in the old market. 93 units of P will be sold at 45 rupees of throughput per unit. This gives me a figure of 4,185 rupees. Let's sum up. 3,000, 2,000, 485. The total throughput is now 9,185 rupees. If I minus 6,600, which is my new operating expense, I go home with a profit of 2,585 rupees. So if you're going to the new market, why don't we choose the right product mix? If the inertia had run us over, we would have landed up with a profit of 1,602 rupees. But our rule, if we had applied, would have landed up not going with that product mix, but a new product mix, which is now giving us a profit of 2,585 rupees. So what does it say? I go to the new market, sell at 20% discount. I now not decide to sell P, but I decide to sell Q. Suddenly, which was my not so good product has become my star product. We know that when companies get into a discipline, get into a culture, they find it tough to change. If something is declared as a star product, it's not very easy for you to go back and say, no, don't sell my star product, now go back and sell my non-star product. By that time, the policies and procedures have been set into place. The incentives are in order, and incentives were pushing the star product earlier. This means that whenever a constraint is broken, the resulting system is a new system, and you have to go back and recalculate everything. This might be very tough to do, or possible in a small organization. But however, if it's a big organization, then the strategy to be followed is much different. Your whole effort will be to make sure that the constraint doesn't shift. That means if B is your constraint, make sure that it remains the constraint. However, that does not mean do not expand. So when you expand B, you also expand others. This will force the constraint to remain at B, and your policies and procedures can remain same. However, this is agenda for another session. Let's go back to now what a company should do. If a company's profit is dependent on understanding the load that the demand places on its resources, what kind of systems should a company have in place to constantly find out the variation in load placed due to the demand? If constraint-based approach tends to create a new environment once a constraint has been broken, a company needs to have systems in place which will keep telling it how the capacity has been booked. There are multiple benefits of this. The first one being that even if you have assumed that you can satisfy all the demand and the product mix has changed because of the variation in demand, one should know whether such a demand can be filled in the time that we have promised to deliver. That means if the due date performance of the deliveries have to be met, we should know what kind of a load they are placing on my machines. This is called capacity planning. The first step to planning will be a capacity planning. So this tool not only tells you how the demand loads your resources, but it also tells you, will you be able to supply this demand in the time that you have promised to supply? And due date performance is a very important factor for a company who has to keep the service levels high and not trouble the buyer. what kind of vendor to look for to offload its production. Not only that, it also tells the company which products it should push in the market and which it should not. It also tells the company what kind of products can help it utilize its resources to the full, thereby milking the assets rather than constantly falling short of the promises that it's making. For a company to know how much of money it's going to make, it can just have a robust bill of material which will help it calculate the input raw material price that goes inside a product, selling price minus the direct cost, which is nothing but the input cost, will give it a throughput for the product. And from its routing, which is the second most important document a manufacturing company should have, it gets to know the load this product will put on resources. From that routing, we get to know the amount of time it will spend on the most important resource. So we get to know throughput per unit time of every product. It will help the company sequence its products from the most profitable to the least profitable. We can then have a cutoff line to say beyond this line we will not consider any products where throughput is less than this amount per minute of the constrained resources. So now what a company needs: a bill of material, a routing, and a system which tells it to calculate the throughput of every product. What it sells per month multiplied by the throughput is the money that the company gets into itself. From there, if we minus the operating expenses, we get to know profit. Just imagine a system which is telling you how you have performed month on month against the current existing ones, where every 6 months a balance sheet or a profit and loss statement tells you how you have performed. It gives you much better control on a very simple way. It doesn't require sophisticated calculation of costs. What it requires is an accurate bill of material, a routing sheet, and your product list which you sell. As it is, both these things, bill of material as well as routing, are required for you to do capacity planning as well as do materials requirement planning. Constraint-based approach not only simplifies and tells you which is a profitable product, but also relates your production capacity and timing of your resource and purchase of material together. Helps you focus at the right place to make money.